The day Earth officially joined the galactic community was sunny and warm in Geneva. Jack Miller tugged at his uncomfortable formal suit and wished he could be back in his workshop in Ohio instead of standing around waiting for aliens to land. As a mechanical engineer who specialized in advanced propulsion systems, he understood why he'd been selected for the welcome committee, but that didn't make the suit any less itchy. "Stop fidgeting," Susan Wright whispered beside him. Susan worked with Jack at NASA and had a much better tolerance for formal events. "They're about to arrive." Jack stopped pulling at his collar just as the sky lit up with the arrival of the alien delegation. The ship that descended was unlike anything humans had ever built, sleek, silent, and seeming to bend light around its edges. It settled on the landing pad with barely a whisper. "That's some impressive tech," Jack muttered, his engineer's mind already trying to understand how the propulsion system worked. The United Nations Secretary-General stepped forward as a door appeared in the side of the ship. A ramp extended downward, and the first aliens Earth had ever officially met emerged into the sunlight. Ambassador Zix Voon of the Trilaxian Confederation stood 7 feet tall with skin that shimmered between blue and green depending on how the light hit it. 4 arms emerged from a slender torso, and large, gentle eyes surveyed the human delegation. "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I extend greetings to Earth," the translator device at Zix Voon's throat conveyed in a slightly mechanical voice. The formal introductions took nearly an hour as each alien met their human counterparts. Jack's mind wandered until a shorter alien with rust-colored scales was introduced as Chief Engineer Pel Durac. "It is an honor," Jack said, suddenly interested. "I'd love to learn about your propulsion systems." The alien's eyes widened slightly. Perhaps there will be time for technical discussions later. The reception that followed was held in the Grand Hall of the United Nations building. Humans and aliens mingled awkwardly at first, but as drinks flowed, the atmosphere relaxed. Jack found himself near a window that overlooked the landing pad where 3 smaller alien craft had joined the main ship. Jack's eyes narrowed as he watched one of the smaller ships. Even from this distance, he could see a slight shimmer in the air near its rear section, the telltale sign of heat not being properly dispersed. "That coolant system isn't working right," he mumbled to himself. Susan appeared at his side with 2 flutes of champagne. "Here, try to look like you're enjoying yourself." Jack took the drink but didn't shift his gaze from the window. "That smaller ship, the one on the left. Its cooling system is inefficient. Look at the heat distortion." Susan sighed. "We're supposed to be making friends, not critiquing their technology. But it's an easy fix. I can see the problem from here." Jack downed his champagne in one gulp and set the empty glass on a passing server's tray. 4 beers later, Jack was engaged in animated conversation with Pel Durac about the differences between human and Trilaxian engineering philosophies. "Your approach to redundancy is fascinating," Pel Durac was saying, "though it seems inefficient to have so many backup systems." "That's because we break stuff all the time," Jack laughed. "We learned the hard way to always have a plan B, and C and D." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion as 2 junior engineers rushed up to Pel Durac, speaking rapidly in their native language. The translator device struggled to keep up, but Jack caught phrases like thermal shutdown and possible damage. "Your ship?" Jack asked. Pel Durac nodded. "The auxiliary vessel is experiencing cooling system failures. Nothing serious, but repairs will take several days once parts arrive from our homeworld." Jack glanced out the window at the ship, then back at his beer. A slow grin spread across his face. "Hold my beer," he said, handing his bottle to Susan. "I think I can fix that thing in about 10 minutes. Before anyone could stop him, Jack was striding toward the exit. Susan hurried after him, still holding his beer. "Jack, what are you doing? You can't just walk up to an alien spacecraft and start tinkering." "Watch me," Jack replied cheerfully as he loosened his tie and removed his jacket. By the time they reached the landing pad, a small crowd of aliens and humans had followed, including Ambassador Zix Voon and Pel Durac. 2 security officers tried to block Jack's path. "Sir, this area is restricted." Jack pointed to his NASA credentials. "I'm part of the official welcome committee, and I'm going to welcome our new friends by fixing their ship." The guards looked uncertainly at the Secretary General, who had also joined the growing crowd. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded and they stepped aside. Jack approached the ship and circled at once, nodding to himself. He pulled out his Swiss Army knife and a roll of duct tape he always kept in his pocket. "You can't be serious," Susan whispered. "You're going to fix alien technology with duct tape?" "Universal constant, Sue. Heat exchange is heat exchange no matter where you're from." Jack knelt beside the ship and located an access panel. The aliens watched in what appeared to be horror as Jack pried open the panel with his knife. Inside was a maze of technology unlike anything on Earth, but Jack studied it for only a moment before nodding confidently. "Just as I thought. The flow regulator is off-center, creates turbulence in the coolant." He reached into the panel up. To his shoulder, Peldurak stepped forward. "Our systems are calibrated precisely. The tolerances are... Your tolerances are great for normal space, but Earth's atmosphere is thicker. You need to compensate." Jack twisted something inside the panel, then used his duct tape to secure a component that appeared to be vibrating, slightly. For 15 tense minutes, Jack worked on the ship, occasionally asking Susan to hand him different tools from his knife. The aliens murmured among themselves, their expressions unreadable to human eyes. Finally, Jack stood up, wiping his hands on his pants. "Try it now." Peldurak hesitated, then spoke into a communicator. The ship hummed to life, and everyone watched, as the heat shimmer that had been visible disappeared completely. "That's impossible," one of the junior engineers said through the translator. "The efficiency readings are 32% improved." Jack retrieved his beer from Susan and took a satisfied sip. Sometimes you just need a fresh perspective. And duct tape. Never underestimate duct tape. Ambassador Zixavoon stepped forward, all four hands clasped in what humans would later learn was a gesture of profound respect. "Engineer Miller, you have violated 17 different safety protocols in our operational manual, and yet you have also improved our ship beyond what our own engineers thought possible." Jack shrugged. "It's kind of what humans do. We see problems, we fix them. Sometimes the manual just gets in the way." The ambassador turned to an aide. "Record everything. This must be studied. I believe we have much to learn from these humans." As the reception continued inside, footage of Jack's repair spread throughout the alien delegation's communications network. By morning, ships across 3 sectors of the galaxy were receiving updates about the strange beings from Earth who solved problems in ways no safety manual had ever anticipated. In the Galactic Council's central archive, a new file was created that day. It contained only the video of Jack Miller saying, "Hold my beer," before proceeding to defy all conventional wisdom. It was the first entry in what would eventually become known throughout the galaxy as the Human Files. And in engineering bays, across 1,000 worlds, curious aliens began experimenting with a strange, sticky substance called duct tape, wondering what other secrets these unusual humans might share with the universe. 6 months after first contact, humans and aliens were working together on various projects across the solar system. One of the most important was a joint mining operation on a large asteroid in the Kuiper Belt. The asteroid was rich in rare elements that both humans and aliens valued highly. Nancy Clark wiped sweat from her forehead as she examined the broken drill bit. At 52 years old, she had spent most of her life working on oil rigs in the Gulf of Mexico, before NASA recruited her for her expertise in drilling operations. Now she was the lead human engineer on a team that included 5 different alien species. "How bad is it?" asked Fred Gomez, her assistant and the only other human on the current shift. Nancy held up the twisted piece of metal. "Bad. The main bit sheared clean off. Must have hit a pocket of that crystal stuff they're so excited about." The mining operation was led by Krelmox, a Vexillian engineer known throughout 3 sectors for precision and caution. The tall, thin alien had skin like polished silver and moved with careful, deliberate motions. Vexillians lived for centuries and were famous for their methodical approach to everything. Krelmox approached the humans, his steps measured and even. "Engineer Clark, I have received your alert about the equipment failure. I have calculated that replacement parts will arrive in approximately 73 hours. Nancy frowned. 3 days? We can't shut down for that long, we'll fall behind schedule. The schedule has been adjusted, Krelmox replied calmly. Safety protocols are clear. Without proper equipment, operations must cease. The other aliens on the team nodded in agreement. There was Zix, a small green being who monitored radiation levels. Dorn and Pella were brother and sister Trilaxians who handled the sorting machinery. And Voon Tral was a massive, four-armed Balaxi who operated the transport vehicles. All of them respected the rules and never questioned Krelmox's decisions. Nancy looked at the idle drill, then at the broken bit in her hand. Let me see what we've got in storage. I might be able to rig something up. Krelmox's silver face showed no expression, but his voice became firmer. Any deviation from standard equipment specifications violates Section 42 of the Galactic Mining Safety Code. Nancy was already walking toward the supply shed. Just give me an hour, she called over her shoulder. Fred followed her, looking nervous. Nancy, maybe we should listen to Krelmox. These aliens know what they're doing. So do I, Nancy replied as she began digging through containers of spare parts. I've been drilling holes in things since before you were born, Fred. The emergency meeting was held in the operations small command center. All the aliens gathered around the table as Krelmox explained the situation to the project managers via holographic communication. The delay is unfortunate but necessary, Krelmox was saying. Safety cannot be compromised. Nancy sat at the back of the room, sipping her coffee and listening. She had spent the last 2 hours examining every piece of equipment in storage. In her mind, a plan was taking shape. When Krelmox finished speaking, he turned to Nancy. Engineer Clark, do you wish to add anything to my report? Nancy finished her coffee and set the mug down on the table. Actually, I do. She stood up and approached the holographic display. Hold my mug, she said to Fred as she passed him. Fred took the mug, looking confused. What are you going to do? Nancy didn't answer. Instead, she pulled up schematics of 3 different alien drilling components on the display. See this Trilaxian rotation stabilizer? It's designed to work with softer materials than we're drilling through, but if we modify it with parts from this Vexillian cooling system and add the power converter from the Balaxi transport loader, we can create a hybrid drill bit that will work even better than our original one. The alien stared at her in silence. Finally, Krelmox spoke. What you are suggesting violates 17 different safety regulations. Those components were not designed to work together. Maybe not, Nancy agreed. But the physics is sound. The materials are compatible, it will work. It is too dangerous, Krelmox insisted. We will wait for proper replacements. Nancy looked around at the other aliens, then at Fred, who still held her coffee mug with a worried expression. Look, she said. I've been drilling in difficult conditions for 30 years. Sometimes you have to improvise. Give me 4 hours. If my solution doesn't work, we'll do it your way and wait for the parts. The aliens discussed among themselves in their own languages. The holographic managers looked uncertain. Finally, one of them, a senior Vexillian, spoke. Engineer Clark's record is impressive. Let her try her solution, but document everything, carefully, Krelmox. This will be a valuable learning experience regardless of the outcome. 4 hours later, Nancy stood before a strange-looking drill bit that combined technologies from 3 different alien civilizations. Parts that were never meant to work together had been carefully modified and joined. The control system was a mix of human programming and alien technology. All the aliens gathered to watch as Nancy prepared to test her creation. Krelmox stood with a data recorder, documenting every detail. This violates the operating manuals of every piece of equipment used in your creation, he noted. Nancy patted the drill affectionately. Manuals are just guidelines. Sometimes you have to trust your gut. The aliens looked confused, not understanding the human idiom, but they stepped back as Nancy signaled she was ready to begin testing. Recording all parameters, Krelmox announced. If this fails, the documentation will help prevent similar attempts in the future. Nancy just smiled and activated the drill. At first, there was a concerning whine as the mismatched parts began to work together. The aliens tensed, some backing up further. But then the sound smoothed out into a powerful, steady hum. The drill bit began to spin, faster and more smoothly than the original had ever managed. "Let's see what this baby can do," Nancy said, and directed the drill toward the asteroid surface. The hybrid bit cut into the rock with surprising ease. Data readings showed it was operating at 127% of the efficiency of the original equipment. Even more importantly, it seemed to be holding up well to the stress. After an hour of successful drilling, even Krelmox had to admit Nancy's solution was working. The aliens gathered around the control panel, studying the readings with obvious interest. "The heat distribution is remarkable," Zix commented, looking at the thermal sensors. "And the vibration dampening effect of the Balaxy converter is most efficient," added Dorn. Nancy couldn't help but look proud. "Sometimes you need to color outside the lines a little." Again, the aliens looked confused by the human expression, but they were clearly impressed by the results. That evening, Krelmox sent a detailed report to the Galactic Mining Authority. The report included complete video documentation of Nancy's modification process and the successful results. The final paragraph of his report read, "I recommend immediate updates to all safety manuals to account for human ingenuity, coupled with an alarming disregard for established protocols. While Engineer Clark's solution violated 17 regulations, the results cannot be disputed. Perhaps we have been too rigid in our approach." Within weeks, mining operations across the galaxy began receiving updates to their safety manuals. A new section appeared, officially labeled Alternative Engineering Approaches, but quickly nicknamed by everyone as the Hold My Mug Protocol, after footage of Nancy's successful modification spread throughout the galactic community. 1 year after Earth joined the galactic community, humans were making progress in diplomatic relations with various alien species. Most aliens found humans fascinating, if somewhat unpredictable. One species, however, had remained distant and difficult to engage with: the Xanthari hive. The Xanthari were insect-like beings with iridescent exoskeletons and complex social structures. They were known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and strict adherence to tradition. They had rejected alliances with 12 other species due to what they considered unforgivable violations of their customs. Alan Rodriguez straightened his tie as he waited in the reception area of the Xanthari embassy on Earth. At 58, Alan was one of Earth's most experienced diplomats, with a reputation for patience and cultural sensitivity. These qualities had earned him the challenging assignment of improving relations with the Xanthari. "Remember," Diane Foster, his assistant, whispered beside him, "no direct eye contact for more than 3 seconds and never touch them under any circumstances." Alan nodded. "I've studied their protocols thoroughly. Let's hope we can make some progress today." The doors slid open, revealing an inner chamber decorated with intricate geometric patterns. 3 Xanthari dignitaries waited inside, their bodies perfectly still in a way that seemed almost unnatural to human eyes. "Honored representatives of Earth," the central figure spoke through a translator device. "I am High Counselor Zith Kavex. We welcome you to this exchange of cultural understanding." Alan bowed at precisely the angle specified in the Xanthari Protocol Manual. "The gratitude of Earth extends to the noble Xanthari for this opportunity. I am Diplomat Alan Rodriguez, and this is Assistant Diane Foster." The formal introductions continued for nearly 30 minutes, with each phrase carefully selected to avoid any possible offense. By the time they were seated for the ceremonial meal, Alan felt like he had successfully navigated the most challenging part of the meeting. The meal consisted of various foods arranged in specific patterns. Each item had symbolic meaning in Xanthari culture, and eating them in the correct order was considered a sign of respect. "You must taste the Gralvex first," Zithkavex explained, indicating a small purple sphere. "It represents new beginnings." Alan picked up the proper utensil and carefully consumed the Gralvex according to protocol. The taste was surprisingly pleasant, reminiscent of sweet berries. The meal progressed smoothly, with conversation focused on safe topics like art and architecture. Alan began to feel hopeful about establishing a genuine connection with the Xanthari. Then came the ceremonial drinking of Zarthal, a thick golden liquid served in ornate cups. This ritual was considered one of the most important parts of Xanthari diplomatic tradition. The Zarthal symbolizes the flowing of ideas between our peoples, explained Zithkavex as an attendant served the cups. When consumed together, it represents our willingness to share knowledge. Alan raised his cup in the prescribed manner and took a careful sip. Across the table, one of the other Xanthari dignitaries, identified earlier as Trade Minister Vexithal Nix, did the same. Suddenly the Trade Minister made a strange clicking sound and lurched forward. His limbs began to twitch and his breathing apparatus emitted a high-pitched whine. "The minister is experiencing a blockage of his respiratory tract," exclaimed the third Xanthari, Science Advisor Nixazithkal. "The Zarthal must have contained an impurity." Alan quickly recognized the signs of choking. The minister needed immediate help. But as he began to rise from his seat, Diane grabbed his arm. "The no-touching taboo," she whispered urgently. "It's their most sacred rule. Breaking it could end all diplomatic relations." Alan looked at the suffering alien, then at the horrified faces of the other Xanthari. None of them were moving to help. Later, he would learn that their rigid social structure prohibited anyone but designated medical practitioners from touching a dignitary, and no such practitioners were present at the meeting. In that moment, Alan made his decision. He handed his martini glass to Diane. "Hold my martini," he said quietly, then moved around the table toward the choking minister. "I apologize for this breach of protocol," Alan said formally, "but I cannot stand by while the honored minister suffers." Before anyone could stop him, Alan positioned himself behind the Xanthari dignitary and performed the Heimlich maneuver, modified slightly to account for the alien's different anatomy. After 3 careful thrusts, a small piece of food dislodged from the minister's breathing apparatus and the alien's breathing stabilized. The room fell completely silent. Alan stepped back, aware that he had just violated the Xanthari's most sacred taboo. He had touched a dignitary without permission, an offense that had ended diplomatic relations with other species in the past. High Counselor Zithkavex rose, slowly, his compound eyes fixed on Alan. The diplomat prepared himself for a formal declaration of offense and the end of his career. "Diplomat Rodriguez," the High Counselor began, his translator device struggling to convey the complex emotions in his voice. "You have violated our most sacred protocol." Alan nodded solemnly. "I accept full responsibility for my actions, High Counselor. If the Xanthari wish to end discussions with Earth because of my behavior, I ask that you direct your displeasure at me personally and not at my species." The High Counselor's antennae twitched in what Alan would later learn was a sign of deep thought. "You knowingly violated our most important taboo. You were aware of the consequences to diplomatic relations." "I was," Alan confirmed. "Yet you chose to act, prioritizing the life of Minister Vexthalnix over diplomatic concerns. Where I come from, preserving life takes precedence over protocol." The room remained silent for several long moments. Then, to everyone's surprise, Trade Minister Vexthalnix spoke. "The humans saved my life when our own customs prevented action. Perhaps there is wisdom in their ways that we have not considered." Science Advisor Nick Zethkal stepped forward. "I have studied human emergency medical procedures. What you performed was the Heimlich maneuver, was it not? A simple yet effective technique." Alan nodded, still uncertain about where this conversation was heading. High Counselor Zithkavex's next words shocked everyone in the room. "We request formal training in these emergency procedures. Our customs serve us well in most circumstances, but today has revealed a significant gap in our protocols. Within weeks, the story of the human diplomat who violated a sacred taboo to save a life spread throughout the galaxy. The Xanthari, instead of cutting off relations with Earth, requested a series of cultural exchanges focusing on emergency medical procedures. The Xanthari updated their own diplomatic protocols to include what they formally called human emergency exceptions, situations where normal taboos could be suspended to preserve life. In diplomatic circles across the galaxy, the phrase "hold my beverage" entered the lexicon as shorthand for about to take necessary but unconventional action. Diplomats from various species began using it when they needed to indicate they were about to break with tradition for a good reason. The incident was added to diplomatic training materials throughout the galactic community, alongside Jack Miller's engine repair and Nancy Clark's drill bit innovation, as examples of how humans approached problems differently, and how sometimes those differences could save lives. 3 years after first contact, humanity had established itself as a minor but respected member of the galactic community. Earth ships were still considered primitive by alien standards, but human crews had earned a reputation for creativity and determination. Captain Olivia Martinez stood on the bridge of the ESS Challenger, Earth's newest and most advanced starship. At 42, Martinez had risen through the ranks quickly due to her tactical brilliance and cool head in crisis situations. The Challenger was not as large or powerful as the warships of other species, but it was the pride of Earth's growing fleet. "Captain, we're receiving a distress call," reported Communications Officer Lisa Wong. "It's coming from the PAX-12 system on the outer rim." "Put it through," Martinez ordered, straightening in her command chair. The main screen flickered to life, showing the worried face of an alien with pale blue skin and delicate features. "This is Governor Trelzan of PAX-12 Colony. We are under attack by Vorg vessels. Our shields are failing. Please, any galactic defense ships in range, we need immediate assistance." Martinez frowned. The Vorg were a hostile species that had appeared 6 months ago on the outer edges of known space. They attacked without warning or communication, destroying settlements and ships before disappearing back into uncharted territory. "How far are we from PAX-12? Martinez asked her navigator. 4 hours at maximum speed, Captain," replied Navigator Sam Johnson, his fingers moving across his console. Martinez made her decision quickly. "Set course for PAX-12, maximum speed. Alert all crew to battle stations." "Captain," her tactical officer Kyle Bennett spoke up, "the Vorg have superior technology. If they have multiple ships, we won't stand a chance alone." "We're the closest vessel," Martinez replied firmly. "We can't leave those colonists to die. Besides, I've been studying the Vorg attack patterns. They have weaknesses we can exploit." 4 hours later, the Challenger dropped out of faster-than-light travel on the edge of the PAX-12 system. The scene before them was grim. 3 Vorg warships, each twice the size of the Challenger, had surrounded the small colony planet. The colony's orbital defense station was already heavily damaged, its shields flickering weakly. "Scan for other galactic defense vessels," Martinez ordered. 2 ships detected, Captain," Wong reported. "The Trilaxian cruiser Swiftwind and the Vexillian defense vessel Righteous Shield. They're holding position at the system's edge." Martinez opened a communication channel to the other ships. The screen showed the captains of both vessels, Commander Zixvoon of the Swift Wind and Supreme Defender Krell Dax of the Righteous Shield. "This is Captain Martinez of Earth Vessel Challenger. What's the situation?" "Captain Martinez," Zixvoon replied, his expression grave. "We are assessing the situation. The Vorg fleet outguns us significantly. We have called for reinforcements, but they are 6 hours away." 6 hours will be too late for the colony," Martinez pointed out. Krell Dax nodded solemnly. "We are aware. We are calculating odds and formulating a strategic retreat to save our vessels for a counterattack once reinforcements arrive." Martinez couldn't believe what she was hearing. "A retreat? While the colonists are still under attack?" "The Vorg technology is superior," Zixvoon explained. "Our safety protocols prohibit engagement when defeat probability exceeds 80%. Current calculations show 93% probability of defeat with total loss of vessels." Martinez looked at her own tactical display. The Vorg ships were indeed formidable, but she had noticed something during her studies of previous attacks. The Vorg ships always maintained a specific formation, suggesting their vessels might have blind spots or weaknesses in certain positions. She also noticed they were positioned near the gravity well of PAX-12's largest gas giant. An idea formed. In her mind, risky, potentially suicidal, but possible. "I have a plan," she announced to the alien commanders. "But I'll need your ships to provide distraction and cover fire." She explained her idea, using the Challenger as bait to lure the Vorg ships into a specific position near the gas giant, where its gravitational pull could be used to disrupt their formation. Once their formation was broken, all 3 Allied ships, Could target the Vorg vessel's apparent weak spots. Impossible, Kreldak stated flatly. The maneuver you describe would require your ship to pass within 0.3 units of the gas giant's gravity shear. Your inertial dampeners would fail. Your crew would be subject to forces exceeding safe parameters. Our safety systems would automatically prevent such a maneuver, added Zixvoon. Martinez looked at her bridge crew. They all understood the risks, but they also knew the colonists would die without action. She turned to Kyle, her tactical officer. Tactical assessment? Kyle studied his console for a moment. It could work, Captain. We'd have to override 4 safety protocols and manually control the gravitational compensators. It's never been done before, but the math checks out. Martinez nodded, then handed Kyle her command tablet. Hold my datapad. She turned back to the alien commanders on the screen. Your ship's safety systems may prevent this maneuver, but ours are more flexible. We're going to try. All we need is for you to provide covering fire when the Vorg formation breaks. Before the alien commanders could protest further, Martinez ordered her communications officer to end the transmission. She then addressed her crew. This will be dangerous. We'll be pushing this ship beyond its designed limits. I won't order anyone to stay at their post for this. If you want to head to the escape pods, now's the time. Not a single crew member moved. Martinez smiled proudly. Navigation, plot a course that will take us between the Vorg ships and the gas giant. Engineering, prepare to override safety protocols. On the inertial dampeners. Tactical, be ready to target their rear quadrants when they turn to follow us. They're taking the bait, Kyle announced as the Challenger sped toward the Vorg formation. The 3 enemy ships immediately adjusted course to pursue the human vessel. The Challenger accelerated toward the gas giant, dancing along the edge of its gravitational field in a way no ship's computer would ever permit. The override of the safety systems allowed the human crew to push the ship's engines and structural integrity to their absolute limits. The bridge crew was pressed into their seats as the inertial dampeners struggled to compensate for the extreme maneuvers. Warning alarms blared throughout the ship as systems approached failure points. Hold position. Now, Martinez commanded as they reached the critical point in their trajectory. The Challenger executed a tight turn that no alien vessel would have, attempted using the gas giant's gravity to slingshot away, while the pursuing Vorg ships were caught in the gravitational pull. Their tight formation, usually an advantage, became a liability as their ships collided with one another, disrupting their shields and defensive systems. Now, Martinez ordered, signal our allies to attack. To their credit, once the Vorg formation was broken, the alien allies moved quickly. The Swift Wind and the Righteous Shield joined the attack, targeting the now vulnerable Vorg vessels. Within minutes, the battle had turned, and the Vorg ships retreated, trailing debris and venting atmosphere. The colony was saved, and within hours, footage of the Challenger's reckless but effective maneuver had been transmitted throughout the Galactic Defense Fleet. The alien commanders, initially skeptical, sent formal commendations to Captain Martinez and her crew. In the after-action report, Supreme Defender Kreldax included this note. The human vessel executed maneuvers that our safety systems would have prevented. While I cannot condone such disregard for established safety parameters, I cannot dispute the results. I recommend all galactic defense vessels review their emergency override procedures in light of today's events. Within months, tactical simulators at every military academy in the galaxy included a new training scenario, the Martinez maneuver, and in combat vessels' operation manuals, a new section appeared, detailing circumstances under which safety protocols could be overridden in extreme situations. The section wasn't officially called Hold My Datapad, but everyone knew that's what it meant. 5 years after Earth joined the galactic community, humans had earned a unique reputation. They weren't the most technologically advanced species, nor the strongest, fastest, or most numerous, but stories of human problem-solving spread throughout the stars. The phrases "hold my beer," "hold my coffee," "hold my datapad," and similar expressions had entered the lexicon of a dozen alien languages. The Galactic Council was the central governing body for over 200 species across 3 spiral arms of the galaxy. Its massive space station orbited a neutral star and housed thousands of representatives, diplomats, and support staff from member worlds. The Council's Grand Chamber could seat over 10,000 beings and was rarely filled to capacity except for the most important occasions. Today was one such occasion. The chamber buzzed with the sounds of hundreds of different species as they gathered for a special session, called to address what many were calling the human question. High Counselor Zixtral, a Trilaxian who had witnessed Jack Miller's original repair of their ship, called the session to order. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, we are gathered today to discuss the integration of humans into our community and the impact of their unique approach to problem solving. The massive screens around the chamber displayed footage of various human interventions over the past 5 years. Jack fixing the alien ship with duct tape, Nancy creating her hybrid drill bit, Alan saving the Xanthari diplomat, and Captain Martinez executing her impossible maneuver. In just 5 years, Zixtral continued, humans have influenced our protocols, procedures, and manuals in ways no other species has in the 1,000-year history of the Council. Some see this as progress. Others view it as dangerous chaos. The chamber erupted in debate. Many species praised human creativity and adaptability. Others warned of the dangers of disregarding established safety procedures. Their disregard for protocols will lead to disaster, warned the Vexillian representative. But their solutions work, countered a Xanthari delegate. Our rigid adherence to rules nearly cost the life of our trade minister. The debate might have continued for hours, but it was interrupted by a piercing alarm. Red emergency lights flashed throughout the chamber. Attention all beings, announced the station's AI system. Critical failure detected in antimatter containment facility. Evacuation procedures initiated. Please proceed to your designated escape vessels in an orderly manner. Panic swept through the chamber. The antimatter containment facility powered the entire station. If it failed completely, the resulting explosion would vaporize everything within 500,000 kilometers. As delegates rushed toward the exits, station security officers tried to maintain order. Among them was Earth's lone security representative, Pete Johnson. Pete was a 45-year-old former plumber from Detroit who had been recruited for his practical knowledge of fluid systems. For the past year, he had been quietly working on the station's maintenance crew, learning about alien technology while fixing the Council's plumbing. While the high-ranking delegates evacuated, Pete made his way against the crowd, heading toward the antimatter facility. He had been working on a cooling pipe near there just yesterday and knew the layout well. In the control room of the facility, alien technicians frantically worked at their stations. The chief engineer, a Balaxi named Dorn Kell, looked up as Pete entered. Johnson, you must evacuate. The containment field is collapsing. We've lost automated control and the manual systems are not responding. Pete looked at the diagnostic screens. The antimatter containment was held in place by powerful force fields, which were powered by a cooling system that prevented the generators from overheating. That cooling system was now failing. What's the core problem? Pete asked, moving to look at the system diagrams. The coolant pressure is dropping throughout the system, Dornkel explained. We believe there's a blockage in the main distribution hub, but the hub chamber is already filled with radiation. Our remote tools can't navigate the space. Pete nodded. He understood fluid dynamics better than most. If the coolant wasn't flowing properly, maybe he could create an alternative pathway. I need to get into the maintenance tunnels beneath the hub, he said. Dornkel's 4 eyes widened. Impossible. The safety protocols strictly forbid access during a containment event. Besides, what could you possibly do? Pete handed his toolbox to his alien supervisor. Hold my tools, he said. I've got an idea. Before anyone could stop him, Pete accessed the maintenance hatch and disappeared into the tunnel system that ran beneath the containment facility. These tunnels housed the complex network of pipes, conduits, and cables that supplied the station's various systems. Pete navigated the cramped space quickly, having spent months learning its layout. He reached the section beneath the coolant distribution hub and examined the pipe network. Just as he suspected, he could see where the main coolant line ran down from the hub above. Using his knowledge of fluid dynamics and the tools he had brought with him, Pete began to create a bypass system. He cut into secondary pipes, rerouted flow using manual valves, and created new connections that the facility's original designers had never intended. The work was difficult in the confined space, and the radiation levels were rising. Pete knew he didn't have much time before the exposure would become dangerous, but he also knew that millions of lives depended on his success. In the control room, Dorn-Kell and the other engineers watched in amazement as the coolant pressure readings began to stabilize. "How is this possible?" Dorn-Kell wondered aloud. "We've made no changes to the system." Another engineer pointed to a security monitor showing Pete in the maintenance tunnel, manually adjusting flows and creating new connections. "The human is creating a bypass." The coolant pressure continued to rise, approaching normal levels. The containment field stabilized. The immediate crisis was averted, giving the station's main engineering team time to implement more permanent repairs. By the time Pete emerged from the tunnels, sweaty and tired but triumphant, the evacuation order had been canceled. The antimatter containment was secure. Word of Pete's actions spread quickly through the station. By the time the Galactic Council reconvened to continue their interrupted session, everyone had heard how a human maintenance worker had saved the station. "Hi," Councillor Zixtrell called for order. "In light of today's events, I believe our discussion about human methodology has been answered in the most practical way possible." The Council voted unanimously to create a new section in every technical manual, safety protocol, and training program across the galaxy. Officially titled Human Alternative Methodology for Emergency Response, it became universally known as the Hold My Beer section, a collection of unorthodox solutions that, while technically violating standard procedures, had proven effective in crisis situations. In his quarters that night, Pete Johnson received a message informing him of his new position: Chief Advisor to the Council on Alternative Emergency Procedures. He smiled to himself as he packed away his plumbing tools. His mom back in Detroit would never believe it. Across the galaxy, engineers, technicians, and operators of all species began to keep a special shelf in their workshops with a small container resembling a human beverage holder. It was rarely spoken of directly, but everyone understood its significance, a silent acknowledgement that sometimes breaking the rules wasn't just acceptable. Sometimes it was necessary. And in the updated Galactic Council Charter, a new phrase was added to the core principles. Wisdom lies not only in creating rules but in knowing when they must be transcended for the greater good.